It's been called the final boss of awful games, a creation from the bowels of Satan, a weapon of mass destruction, and probably about 250,000 or so compound swear words. It's not a fate you would expect for any public domain game, but the almighty Crazybus for the Sega Mega Drive has, through one way or another, achieved a certain level of infamy. You may well know this already. It's a legendary game in meme thanks to its unbelievably crude graphics, its non-existent gameplay, and, of course, the music. The most discordant and unlistenable piece in video game history. But as usual, I wanted something more. I wanted to see just what I could find out about this game's history, the hows and whys of its creation, and why it managed to become so notorious. And it just so happens that I've managed to find out a lot. I've even found what could be called a spiritual sequel. So, keep on tuned in and let's have a look at this. Let's start then with the bare facts, a look at the game itself for those who might not be in the know. Although really, to call Crazybus a game isn't exactly true. No, not because it's a bugger-throbbing vulva breakfast insult to games or whatever. It's because it's essentially a test program. You start with the music, that glorious music, a low-quality picture of a bus, some credits in Spanish, and the proud assertion that the game is made in Venezuela. Now, Venezuela is not exactly known for its gaming history. Indeed, it's more known for their leaders disliking them intensely. In 2009, a ban was introduced on the sale of violent video games, punishable by years in prison, while Hugo Chavez and later Nicolas Maduro would frequently rail against them, saving special ire for the 2008 title Mercenaries 2 World in Flames. This of course being because said game was set in Venezuela and featured an antagonist president who may as well have been named Lupo, I am a corrupt communist dictator, Bandes. It's oddly appropriate then that Crazybus would be the most famous game to actually come out of the country. Anywho, you press start and you have a choice of Venezuelan buses to pick from, a brief explanation of the controls, and then you're away, moving in a straight line from left to right at the same speed whether going forward or reversing, and even if the bus goes off to the right of the screen, it'll just wrap back to the left. The A button honks the horn and the C button goes back to the title screen. There's no real aim here. There's a counter that goes up from 0 to 65535, because 65535 is the highest possible number in 16-bit binary, but you could reach this simply by pressing left at the start and wrapping that counter straight back to the maximum number. So you do this for as long as you can stand it, until you get bored. Or, more likely, until you have captured as much footage as you need for your YouTube video. So, well, that's it really. I'm not about to launch into any kind of invective here, because this isn't a game. This wasn't a commercial product, although perversely in the years since people have seen fit to stick it onto a cartridge and sell it as such. So how and why did it come about? For that I take you to August 2004 and a ProBoards forum, yes they still exist, for something called Devster. What is Devster? It's a website made by a man named Joseph Norman that's filled with resources, tools and various other bits and pieces for budding Mega Drive hackers, those interested in making public domain games, demos, that sort of thing. Actually, the website's still up. Want to see it? Oh boy. I mean, that certainly is a glorious, legendary example of the World Wide Web, isn't it? The frames, the solid clashing colours that could light up a room, the pictures. Doesn't this take you back to those heady days? Those Microsoft front page, hell maybe not even that, those making HTML pages through Notepad days? It's wonderful. Beautiful in its sheer ugliness. The only thing that's missing is, a few animated GIFs, maybe a revolving hazmat sign here, a chattering skull there. Wondrous. I think you'll agree that it's utterly appropriate that a place like this would spawn Crazybus. So, on August the 17th, 2004, a frequent forum user, site contributor, and Venezuelan Sega enthusiast and budding PD coder named Tom Monero posts version 0.3 of Crazybus. In his own words, it's nothing special, just a colourful bus to move from here to there. Nothing special, he says. How wrong he would be. The game was made after 3 days of hard, quotation marks his, work in a program called Bazi Aga XORZ, which you may have never heard of. Basically, it's a basic compiler for budding Sega coders. A classic blank sheet with all the classic basic instructions, couldn't be any faster to use, totally designed for coding beginners. Here's some basic, go play with it. In classic Spectrum tradition, I can say that this game was written entirely in BASIC. Makes me think. Maybe someone could use this to port cassette 50 games onto the Mega Drive. Like anyone would want to do such a thing. So, I digress. Tom Monero posts his game, gets some new info and some encouragement, then goes back to the shed and works some more, posting up several more versions of Crazybus over the next couple of months and getting much the same. The new versions add more buses, more splash screens, other little fixes here and there, the usual stuff. Thanks to Planet Emulation, a fantastic site which never deletes anything, you can track the evolution of Crazybus all the way back to version 0.1, when there wasn't even any splash screens of buses or anything. Amusingly enough though, the music, that was there from the beginning. Speaking of which, as far as I can tell from my small programming knowledge, Crazybus's infamous music is little more than Tom testing out how Basiego XORZ gets talking to the Mega Drive sound driver using the simplest way possible. Just assign a random integer to it. The Crazybus tune is never exactly the same each time you play it, but it will always be a completely random selection of notes. So the different versions appear on the Devster forums for a few months until we get to 1.0, at which point updates pretty much cease. It's basically a finished experiment by that point. Tom himself posts fairly often on the forums about various other things Sega related, and life just continues on. No one hears of Crazybus again. That is until a couple of years later. The internet being what it is, it's kind of hard to figure out exactly when it blew up. I'm not sure if there's an exact moment, and some info seems to have been lost, but it clearly had a lot to do with YouTube. But more than that, just why would anyone even be aware of it at all? We're talking about a public domain game on a very, very obscure site. I mean, I don't know, but I can speculate that it's due to a change in the way that ROMs get downloaded. Thanks to better internet, the popularity of torrents and all of that, it became much easier in like the mid-to-late 2000s or so to simply download full sets of ROMs for a system like the Mega Drive, as opposed to downloading them individually and obviously making sure to delete them after 24 hours. So you'd get a full set, probably taken from somewhere like Planet Emulation, which just so happens to have Crazybus in the public domain section. Not that they're the only ones, that's just an example. You'll always have people who then scour through these sets looking for stuff they haven't played, and in doing so, well, they're going to come across this game. And of course there is one thing about Crazybus that immediately stands out. I mean, duh. And so gradually, more and more people play Crazybus, and then they share the experience, capture a quick video from an emulator, upload it to YouTube. Awful games have always been a commodity here, and one particularly rich strain of that is awful video game music. Everyone has a laugh over Sonic Spinball Options, Resident Evil Mansion Basement and so on. Crazybus, well that fits right in. You can post it and simply say, there you go, I win. There is no music worse than this. And so this little programming experiment starts to get some notoriety. The earliest Crazybus vid on YouTube is dated to around about the middle of 2009, which seems about right, and it seems it really started to gather momentum in 2010. Although sadly a bunch of Crazybus vids from these times were lost to a copyright troll, much to the ire of the community and, as we'll actually see, the original creator. You follow these vids with the usual let's plays and reviews, scorching its awful gameplay, swearing at the music and whatnot, until finally you hit the ultimate. The Angry Video Game Nerd reviewed it in December of 2014, thus ensuring its eternal infamy. Certainly when you look at it on Google Trends, there is a whopping big spike in the interest around Crazybus around that time. This was, mind you, one of those times when various other awful game reviewers, AVGN clones to use a more derogatory term for them, beat him to the punch, although considering the game's history that's not surprising or anything. Similar things happened with Big Rigs, which is Crazybus's natural sister bad game. You might wonder then, just what did the creator actually think of all of this? Does anyone know? Well, yeah actually. As mentioned previously, Tom Monero was a frequent poster on the Devster forums until around about 2015 or so, and in this little corner of the internet they would watch from afar and laugh at Crazybus's newfound fame, Tom himself in particular, proudly taking up the claim from various people that the music was akin to a weapon of mass destruction, without ever actually leaving the forum and announcing himself to the greater world as the man behind the madness. I mean, it's not like he had any emotional attachment to it after all. It was a learning experiment he'd knocked up in literal days. With the help of a couple of others, he even restarted development, creating a definitive and final version 2.0 of the game in around about 2010. Of course, there's only minor changes to it at best, the splash screens are of higher quality, although it does now have a very appropriate Sega logo intro. Tom doesn't even seem to mind that people have put the game on cartridges and sold it for money that obviously he doesn't see a penny of. Just the way it is. Pissing off AVGN seems to have been an ultimate achievement, something that, when done, could have been crossed off the bucket list. Still, I did promise some sort of sequel, didn't I? And there is one. Sort of. Crazybus wasn't the only thing Tom ever made. You can find it and various other little projects on that oh-so-glorious of Internet 1.0 thins, his personal webpage. There's mostly Sega stuff, of course, with a little bit of NES thrown in particular a Spanish translation for, of all games, A Week of Garfield. Again, you have to laugh at the creator of Crazybus making a translation for a classic piece of Japanese kasogi. There's a couple of little demos here and there, mainly Christmas ones, as well as a PC Mega Drive EMU front-end called Gen ROM Suite that, if memory serves, was actually used by a fair few people in the days before Hyperkin, Launchbox and all of that. And then there's Crazybus's natural successor, Plucker Master. Plucker Master, alas, doesn't feature any sort of bus driving, but it does feature something even more exciting, making license plates. This is more of a piece of software made in 2008, which allows you, just for a few inputs, to create a license plate for your Venezuelan motor vehicle. Pretty much all the options you need are here, and at the end of it you get a proper display for your license plate. Fantastic. And of course, well, there's the music. Is it any better than last time? Well, not really, no. It certainly makes for a nice companion piece to Crazybus for that reason, and also for the general vehicular connection. And it is of course very handy if you want to quickly knock up a display for a bunch of nice big rude words. Although if you know me, you'd know that I'd never ever do anything like that, because this is a highbrow show and I would never subject you to such toilet levels of humour. Alas, Plucker Master hasn't quite reached the level of infamy that Crazybus has. But who knows? Maybe one day, when the appetite is ripe for such things. But for now, I think we've perhaps squeezed all the blood we can out of this stone. I mean, what else is there to say? This did end up being a very nice little story. There's all sorts of classic old garish websites, PD Mega Drive games, and, well, Tom Monero. He appears to be a really lovely guy, actually. Hopefully he's doing good now, whether he's still in Venezuela or he decided to move, like, you know, a lot of other people have. Crazybus will always have some sort of strange place, though. I mean, when people are happily paying 30 smackers for an old PD game knocked up in Venezuela in days where you simply move a bus from left to right while the worst game music ever plays in the background, well, you've certainly contributed. Bye for now. Thanks very much for watching this video on the story of Crazybus. If you like the video, then please follow me on my social media and also support me on Patreon, where you can be part of this glorious list of people right here. Andrew Dalton, Andy Capt, Asobi Kwan DX, Chris, Chris Cox, Conrad Pritchard, Daniel Briggs, Daniel Dave Taylor, Dave Cork, David Rose, Dustin Cooper, Gary Samaden, Geordie Alex, James Brown, James Loveridge, Jason Stevens, Jace Alexander, Lee Norris, Lukas Kuligowski, Martin Pataki, Nicholas Tristan, Nikki and Bunty, Peter Jack, Filter Prog, Potter Margel, Renbimon, Are You OK 2000, Seth Robinson, Simon Gulliver, Yucca Operator, Zach Roach, and to all the rest of the community, thank you and goodbye.